Hi everybody, welcome to the live stream. I've had a pretty, I'm just trying to configure a little bit. I've had a pretty rough week. This whole week has been really long, so I thought I would live stream today because it was really easy to do the last time. I have a drink this time so I won't choke, and I hope the stream to last about 30 to 45 minutes. If we go overtime, please somebody remind me not to go overtime. If you guys have comments, I will not be responding to those here because it was very distracting for last stream. I think I've kind of got the hang of it. It's a new format for me, so please bear with me if I just don't get it. Additionally, I'm at my boyfriend's house, so if you hear him screaming, he's playing a video game in the other room. He's not normally extremely loud, but we'll see. In terms of this week, I've recorded a video with Ex-Cult Baby. If you're not following her, you should, because she's great. She's been on the show. She's been on Cole's show. Well, I guess it's our show now. Out of the Fold podcast. You should definitely go see that. And mentioning Out of the Fold, Zara and I did a podcast just this Saturday, and it's been released today, so you should completely go and listen to that. I will add those into the description later. As for today's live stream, I have more questions to answer. I don't know how many episodes these are going to be because I definitely covered more than I expected in the last live stream, but I guess I can spend a little bit more time. Like, I'll try not to rush through the questions. I felt like I did that for the last live stream, and I won't be doing that this time. So from Pinhead King, we have a tweet that goes, "Was there ever a time when you knew it was a lie, but you felt like you had to pawn heirs to keep relationships?" I definitely did. I still feel like I do, with much less pressure on the line. In terms of whether or not I felt like it was a lie, I definitely did at certain points. I had like a year of just doubting my faith. So I definitely did buy into the lie, even though I felt like it was a lie to me. I didn't do it to keep relationships. I never found any benefit in lying to keep relationships. And eventually I did own up to a few family members who I felt comfortable with that I was non-religious, and they kind of just said, "Don't ever tell anyone else." And I really didn't like that. Whether or not you should, it really depends on your situation. I don't believe in lying typically. Lying doesn't really solve many problems. I'm not saying it's always bad, but it doesn't tend to solve problems, especially when you're covering something. It's always good to be honest, but it's understandable. It's completely understandable when it's not made easy for you. So yeah, I'll move on to the next question. I'll just address that comment before I move on. In terms of the new job, I've started as an editor at Faithless Hijabi, and you should follow that Twitter handle and Instagram account. It's the same. I'll be reading through stories and editing them so that we can share with the world what a lot of Muslims and questioning Muslims and ex-Muslims have to go through with their families and their religion. So it'd be good. It's going to be good. I already have a buttload of stories to look through and edit and post. So those will be coming to you too soon. So next question from Norma Jean or at Hope Springs 100 is, are you spiritual? I am not spiritual, not in the slightest. Spiritual, I feel like, is a very loaded term. A lot of different people have different ideas of what spiritual means. For me, if I was to consider myself spiritual, it would just be whether or not I'm feeding my own spirit. And I definitely am, because I'm living my life like I want to live it, even if it's not ideal. I'm still doing the best to live my life as it should be lived, essentially. The way you want to live it is the way life should be lived. The second question from Hope Springs is about Sharia zones in the UK, and whether or not those actually exist. Sharia zones don't exist. not under any kind of governing body anyway. There are people who are like da'is and people who spread Islam in the UK who like to police areas, but they don't exist, not as far as I know. And I live in London. I live in a very, you know, Muslim populated city. There's a lot of Muslims in this city, and I've never come across such a thing. Granted, I've only lived in like the west and northwest. I haven't really been down east very much. It's not somewhere I like to go because a lot of them are Bengali down there, and I am Bengali, and I don't want to be recognized, don't want to be harassed. It's just less painful for me to go there. But as far as I'm aware, Sharia zones aren't really a thing. Next question is from, it's another one from Hope Springs 100. She's like one of my earliest followers, by the way. She's great. If you're not following her, you should, because she's like a little sister to me on Twitter. And I love her a lot. So if you're watching this, thank you for being around for such a long time. Even though I really started in like October, you've been a driving force for me to continue. So thank you so much for these questions and for just being around and, cheering me on, despite all the negative comments I get all the time. But she asked what were the stages that I went through while deconverting. In terms of deconverting, I had a really, really hard time. Oh, hi. Hi, Norma. I had a really, really hard time deconverting. And the reason for that is that I had, and honestly, like it's really stupid because it is stupid. That's why it's stupid. I had dedicated my life to studying and practicing Islam to please something that doesn't exist. At least not in the Islamic form, like I discussed God in the last live stream, and I don't think he exists. And if he does exist, I don't think he's actively pursuing worship. So I had devoted my entire life to being a Muslim, and the best kind of Muslim that I could possibly be. And people have asked me before, Muslims mainly, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how good a Muslim were you when you were a Muslim? And in hindsight, I was a 10 out of 10 Muslim. I did my best to be a Muslim. While I was a Muslim, I probably wouldn't have said 10 out of 10. I probably would have said like a 6 or a 7 because you're always meant to be modest. But in hindsight, from where I'm standing now, I was a 10 out of 10 Muslim. I did my best to be a Muslim. I did my best to spread Islam. I did my best to be my best Muslim self. And I don't know what else to tell you if you don't believe me on that. And in terms of my deconversion, it was very, very difficult for me. I feel like a lot of people who think that people who leave religion, for example, have like a really easy journey out because they can do what they want, and they can eat pigs and have sex with whoever they want, and they can drink alcohol. I don't think there's a soul on this planet who has left Islam for those reasons. I mean, there may be one. There's always one outlier, right? But the majority, or even a minority, I doubt that there's anyone who just leaves to follow their desires. And even if they did, it's still a valid reason, in my opinion. I mean, you should be able to believe whatever you want to believe. And also, there are Muslims who do that anyway, who remain Muslims. So, I mean, if you really wanted to do that and keep your faith, you could, because those things don't typically take you out of the religion. But in terms of deconverting and how I got there, it started with questioning. It started with really having a lot of logical fallacies, like I felt like my hand was forced. I felt like my hand was forced to disobey God. So it went from me being a full believer to me doubting for like a year, like going back and forth, praying regularly, fasting, trying to find answers and just not getting any signs. And then eventually just being like, I'm done. I've spoke to you, God, for 20 years. I've seen not a single thing. Everyone who has helped me in my life has always been like really helped me, like helped me get out of a tough situation, or helped me in like an existential crisis. 80% of those people have been non-Muslims, and people who have no intention of converting to Islam, who will never go back on what they believe. And I cannot think for a second that a merciful God would put those people in fire for all eternity. I can't. um, and it initially started like that, where I was like angry at God when I first left. I was like, He exists, Allah exists, but I'm angry at you and I don't want to worship you. And people would say that prayer isn't for you, prayer is for God. Prayer isn't for God, prayer is for you to seek forgiveness. But for me, from what I understand, like, I'm not an expert on gods. Okay, I'm not a god. I don't know any gods. But I understand what mercy is. You see somebody who's thirsty, you give them water. You see somebody who's poor, you give them money. You see somebody who's suffering, and you take away that suffering from them, even a little bit. That is what mercy is. And this God that has been described in the Quran, this God that has been described in the Hadith, this God that has been described in many religions, He doesn't seem to fit the whole merciful, gracious bill. And I didn't like it. I honestly didn't like it. And I eventually decided that that form of a God does not exist. There's no way He can exist. And if He does exist, it is my duty to resist that, because that is a self-proclaimed asshole who doesn't deserve worship at all. So yeah, that's how I sort of deconverted, and it's still kind of happening, because I've held on to a lot of things that I believed as a Muslim. I'm still super superstitious, and that will take time. Like, even with the hijab, I'm still coming off of it. I'm still really ashamed of a lot of things. You know, in Muslim families, they don't really teach you how to dress or how to do your hair or look pretty. So I'm learning all of those things, and I'm feeling ridiculous about them. But I'm slowly moving on. I'm slowly moving on with my life, and I'm carrying on. And I know where I want to go, and I know what I want out of my life. And that's really, I feel like that was really important while deconverting, is knowing where I want to go, and what I want to do. So yeah, that would be my like deconversion story. Next question is, how do you deal with the hate that comes from the regressive left? It's so frustrating because they are born in a country where nobody would kill them for what they believe. Education is available in their country. They learn about freedom, and they still get so much ignorance. And that was from Princess Cinder 8. I think that's what it says. The regressive left has been very frustrating for me. The reason for that is that they seem to be the ones that are trophying rights for everybody. They get super offended about everything. Yet when we talk about our abuse and our Islam that we went through and then leaving and how that affected us, for some reason that's not valid and that's offensive. And I honestly think it's got to do with a lot of guilt. I think it's got to do with a lot of quote unquote white guilt, because Islam is basically the brown man's Christianity. That's what it is. And personally, I don't get it, because you see a lot of lefties, I don't like using that term, but that's what they are. People on the left, you see a lot of them fighting for women's rights and then supporting the hijab. You see a lot of them fighting for, younger people to get the vote, and then supporting Islam, which, isn't the best on the front of education, especially secular education. You see them fighting for freedom, and then they're standing for a religion that literally wants a totalitarian doctrine. And I'm not saying that everybody has that interpretation, but that certainly was the interpretation that I was taught. And when you say things like that, I cannot comprehend how you can just go on accepting something like that, especially when you're told and you're given proof and you're shown, all these things that exist within Islam. And I remember talking to a coworker about this, and I'm quite open. I like talking to people about religion. Religion is something that I'm very interested in. I still continue to look in. I think a lot of people assume that I don't look into religion because I've left religion, but that is certainly not the case. It's a personal interest of mine to look into religion. Um, and I was talking to a coworker of mine who is black herself. She was Jamaican, and she could not believe that so many Jamaicans convert to Islam because Islam promotes slavery, or has doctrines that allow slavery. And she just could not comprehend it. She didn't understand why black people would convert to a religion that actively allows slavery when they themselves in history have been slaves. And it's the same with this, like people who support the oppression of women through Islam, but at the same time support women's rights. It's like they have these ideological blinkers on that they can't or don't want to see that side of Islam, because they only have one narrative, and that narrative is that these people deserve rights to their culture. And you've seen it a lot in the UK. Only recently has FGM, female genital mutilation, for example, someone has been prosecuted for it. It's been disallowed for a very long time, but we've only seen it this year that has happened, that someone has actively been prosecuted for it. And so many other things have come out for reasons of shame and oppressing women, like breast ironing or breast flattening, so that they don't attract the attention of men. And as someone who is an educator who works in schools, I have always been told, do not accept the excuse that this is their culture, because it's still a violation of a human right for someone to take their daughter away and then remove a part of their body without their consent, without them being fully lucid to consent, because children cannot consent. If it was the child's or the woman's choice after she had reached maturity, that's separate. That is her body. She gets to do whatever she wants to her body. But when you take a child out of school and you take them to a situation where they could potentially die from blood loss, I fail to reconcile things like that. I fail to reconcile the perspective of the left when they come in and they say that these people deserve to do these things or are allowed to do these things because it is their culture. And it baffles me, because traditions, we have so many traditions on this planet from so many different places that did horrible things. The Mayans used to perform human sacrifices. They used to rip hearts out of people. You can't, a Mayan can't just walk up and say, this is my culture. They can't, because it's a violation of a human right. But when it comes to Muslims, for some reason we accept it and we go on with it, even if it's disallowed in our country. So yeah, I don't know. When they come up to me, I don't really know how to respond, because I don't want to be mean. It's not within my nature to be mean, but it really tests me. It really and truly tests me, because I cannot stand that amount of bullshit. I cannot. So yeah, I'm still devising ways of interacting with people from the left. It's a struggle for sure, and I would definitely have to find a way to frame an argument about that. I'll move on for now, because I can feel myself getting angry. But thank you for that question. Next question is from Olympe. Well, it's not even really a question. It's just something stupid someone said. It's from Olympe777. It says that you left Islam, but not God. I don't know what that means. I have definitely left God behind. He has as much value to me as a fairy godmother at this point. He doesn't exist, and he doesn't grant wishes. Live your life, work hard, make the best out of the time you have on this planet, because you're not going to get any of it back. The next question is actually a request for me to read Arabic. And I do intend to. I printed out some pages, and I don't know, I'll leave it up to you guys, because I don't want to trigger anybody. I'm happy to do it, because I've already agreed that I may read Surah Al-Kahf, but I don't want to trigger anyone. So if there's anyone in the audience who doesn't want me to read Surah Al-Kahf, please let me know now. I'm watching the comment section. I don't know how long the feed takes for you to receive it. but let me know, and I will happily oblige in reading some Quran for you. And it was actually a point of pride for me because I was really, really good at it. I used to teach Kirat. I used to teach people to read Quran. Um, so it was really a point of pride for me. Obviously, I could never go public with it because I'm a woman and my voice is aura, or it is like something to be hidden from men, because he might fall in love with me from my voice. So I'm not seeing any objections. So I may open just a page. Is it still recording? It should be. I'll open a page to read some Quran for you. Okay, I'm not going to bother saying Bismillah. I'll just open a full page and I'll only read the first, I don't know, I'll see how long I can go. I'll read a few. Okay. There's one person saying you don't have to. I'm happy to oblige because a lot of people are like, you can't read Quran, or you can't read Arabic. I studied Arabic for 5 years, so anyone who's saying that has just got their head up their ass. But I'm not going to bother saying the Bismillah part because it's a whole lie. But I'll read Surah Al-Kahf from the beginning, and it goes. الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا قيما لينذر بأسا شديدا من لدنه ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا حسنا ماكثين فيه أبدا وينذر الذين قالوا اتخذ الله ولدا ما لهم به من علم ما لهم به من علم ولا لآبائهم كبرت كلمة تخرج من أفواههم إن يقولون إلا كذبا. Okay, that's the first 5 verses, and I know I butchered some of it, but I can read Quran. Okay, like I was a Muslim before, so I don't know. Thank you for saying that my voice is beautiful. It's good to know because no man ever heard it reading Quran. Now they have. You're gonna go Muslim again. Why did Allah only speak Arabic? Honestly, I don't know. Apparently, Allah chose one of the most difficult languages in the world to reveal His message in. Even after studying Arabic for 5 years, reading the Quran endlessly for years and years and years, studying it to a T, reading all the tafsirs, apparently I still don't get it. So, I mean, Allah clearly has a lot to answer for. But thank you for listening to my 5 ayahs of Surah Al-Kahf. It's actually one of my favorite surahs. I will move on now. Thank you, Fiku Master 1, for saying that, and tagging Ali Dawa, which I will get to at a later time. Do I understand Arabic? I do to an extent. I haven't read or spoken Arabic in a very, very long time. But yeah, I understand some. And he added at the bottom saying that a lot of people will question you on your reading and recitation skills. Just be prepared. We'll love to be part of the Q&A session. Cheers. And I think he meant well. You know, doesn't bother me that I have to read some Quran. I mean, it's a piece of literature at the end of the day, no matter how harmful. Next, from GCSB 2019, could you please address why Muslim mothers allow in silence the abuse of their daughters? Why are these women fighting for their? Why aren't these women? I think he meant fighting for their freedom or equal rights. Okay, so the reason for that, in my opinion, the reason why Muslim mothers allow it in silence is because most of the time the abuse happens at the hands of the people that they're married to or the men that they're married to. And Islamically speaking, from the perspective of someone who came out of Islam and fully understood the implications of getting married to a Muslim man, you cannot disobey your husband, and you can beat your kids. So that's why they're silent on it. Um, from personal experience, I came from a very abusive home, and a lot of people have chosen that for me to be the reason for why I left. But I mean, I don't give a fuck what other people think. Um, I came from an abusive home, and my mother always intervened when my father got aggressive, mostly with my younger brother, who's only like 2 years younger than me. He got a lot of beatings because he just didn't want to do some of the things my dad wanted him to do. And my dad would try to beat him into submission. My mother always intervened, always, even at the risk of getting hurt herself. Um, but the reason why some mothers sort of stand by is because they know they can't disobey their husbands. Even if their husbands want sex and the woman doesn't want sex, they have to lie with him because the angels will curse her until the morning. And that's why. And I don't think all mothers are that way. Mine certainly wasn't. But I mean, if you're asking why, that's why. And why aren't they fighting for their equal rights? In my opinion, it's because they've been fed the lie that Islam gave them rights, and that all the rights that they have in Islam is all the rights that they should have. That being that their husband can marry women without their permission. Their husband can have concubines. Their word is half that of a man. They're meant to put their role as mothers and wives first. They have to obey their fathers and their husbands. And after their husbands die, their sons. They have to have a guardian anywhere they go. They have to wear hijab anywhere they go. If they are harassed, their hijab will be questioned. Things like that. Things like that. To them are put into this rose-tinted case of being like, Islam gave you rights because before Islam, the Arabs were burying their daughters alive, despite the fact that in other cultures, women could own property and women could divorce their husbands, and women had more freedom than Islam gave. For example, let's take the example of Khadija, which Muslims love to quote as the reason for why women can have jobs. Khadija was a pre-Islamic woman who proposed to Muhammad. It was big of her to do that because a woman proposed to a man. She also had a business, and Muhammad was her employee. Now, after she died, none of the Prophet's wives had a job or a business or a high standing besides the fact that they were the mother of the believers or the wives of the Prophet. It's not the best position to be in my opinion. You're just someone who, and also none of those women, as far as I'm aware, except for Maria, who was his sex slave, gave birth to any children. So all his children were by that first woman, which I think metaphorically says a lot about his wives. Feels like this chamber of pleasure that he would have in every single house of his wives. I don't know. It just rubbed me the wrong way. As soon as I left Islam, all of that stuff just felt wrong to me because it was no longer God's divine man who had done all these divine things. It was just this flawed human being who had duped this entire nation and conquered the rest of it, who had, not even seduced, just sort of put these women in houses and called them his wives and disallowed them to marry anyone after he died. And Aisha was only like 18 when he died. Aisha, his child bride, whom he married when she was 6, was only 18 when he died. And she lived until she was like in her 60s or something. I don't see how any of that is fair. I'm sorry, I went on like a huge tangent there. But yeah, that's why they don't fight for freedom or their equal rights, because they feel like God has given them their free rights because their fathers didn't bury them alive. So at AV Sazena, I think that's how it's spelled, Saxena. I don't know if you're listening or not, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Asked, how do you free more people from the clutches of this totalitarian ideology? Well, for the most part, I feel as though many Muslims don't see it as a totalitarian thing. They do try to keep it within their personal life. I feel as though I'll say about 70 to 80% of Muslims want to live peacefully and don't want to rule over the world with Islam. It's the it's the rest of the like 20 to 30% of Muslims that you really have to worry about. And I don't know how to free them because they've been indoctrinated. I was indoctrinated. I was led to believe that this was the best way to be as a human being. And it's wrong, in my opinion. Um, Honestly, I've found that people are more willing to engage with you if you just show them some kindness and some understanding. Obviously, it doesn't always work. I've had my fair few arguments with many people online, but in terms of the people that I more or less mingle with at work and, in my day-to-day life, I've found that just talking to them and speaking through an experience sort of shows them the other side of what, for example, I faced, because I've met Muslims who were never brought up with a hijab or brought up with, extremism. And, they live very peaceful lives. They have no desire for totalitarianism. I have no idea how to convince someone who has that ideology out of it. I don't know. You probably have to seek a specialist for that. Yeah, so, let's do, what time? How long has it been? It's been 31 minutes. I'll do maybe 2 more questions and then I'll call it a day. So from Vade Macum 83, what is the first event, book, encounter, etc. that made you doubt your beliefs? First event would probably be questioning, why did God destine such a horrible life for me? Why did God, put me in this position where I have to disobey my father? Why did God, why can't I question my fate? This is what He's written for me. Why am I put in this corner of, disobeying my father and, just silently taking abuse? That was the event. The hadith that sort of turned me was the messenger came out of the mosque and like yelled at a bunch of companions for talking about qadr, because they had a lot of disputes about what it meant, and naturally they would, because the concept is very skewed. It doesn't make any sense. But he had basically commanded them not to talk about it because it's alim al-ghaib. I think that's how you say it. It's knowledge of the unseen or knowledge of the unknown. Only God knows. So, it's a tenet of faith, but you're not allowed to question it. And last question from Jeev1551. Do you see how, as an ex-Muslim, Islam is idol worship, as using a male patriarchal figure that gives men power over women? I had never considered Islam to be idol worship. I mean, people point it out, and I accept what they're pointing out about the Kaaba and the black stone and things like that. There's definitely elements of idolatry there. Obviously, Islam came from a community that was very ingrained in their polytheism. Muhammad was surrounded by that throughout his childhood. The Kaaba, which is the house or the black box in Mecca, if for those of you who don't know, that housed nearly 360 different gods that the Arabs used to worship. And Muhammad decided to smash them all and decided to say that house, or the house of God, or the Kaaba, was only belonged to Allah, and that was His house. Now, I can see why people would think that that's idol worship, because they're like circumambulating a black box in the desert and also kissing a black stone. There's a fair amount of lore or storytelling that goes around that, but I mean, it's irrelevant to me because it's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. All the idol worshipping, all the Allahness, all everything. It's all it's all nonsense. For example, with the black stone, the reason why we have to kiss it is to absolve our sins, because the black stone used to be white when it fell to earth, and it was Every time someone committed a sin, a black dot would appear on it. And I've never read an authentic source about this. I've just heard of the stories. So a black dot would be put on it for every time a human being committed a sin, and it had turned black with the sins of human beings. It's the most irrelevant ritual of the entire Hajj. Like, I can understand every other ritual in Hajj, stoning the devil, like going around the Kaaba, running between Safa and Marwa, all of that I can understand. Begging for forgiveness at Arafat, I can completely understand all of that. The kissing the black stone part, though, like that part always like confused me. Why do you have to kiss a stone? Why do you have to kiss a stone? Now that I've answered those questions, I will just go through the comments that you guys have left me, and I'll go through those because I feel like that's fair. If you have any questions for me to answer right now, please do ask them. I will go up in the chat to check all of the questions to make sure that I've answered them all. So thank you for congratulating me on my job, Samir. Hi, Norma. Yes, Muslims do also drink and have sex and everything, and they're still Muslims, and I don't get it. If you're going to be a Muslim, be a Muslim. 100%. That's the only way I work. Somebody put a sleeping emoji. It's fine. Hi, JD Bora. Hi, Nemo, or Netmo, or I've forgotten how to pronounce that name. I know it's a Somali name. Hi, Jamila. Jamila, your story is amazing, and I feel like you're talking my mind, ex-Muslim here. Congratulations on your freedom. Charlie, I'm so glad I've never had to deal with religion. I'm so sorry that you had to, but I'm happy that you've chosen to leave it. Thank you. From Francois Webb, he said that I don't have to read Quran. I mean, I read it. It's fine. Thank you from Keep Asking, who says, hi, Faye, congrats on leaving the supremacist cult. I guess. From Francois Webb, how did your family react when they knew you left Islam? Some family members were kind of like, don't tell anybody else. Other family members were like, you need to leave. They weren't happy about it. They certainly weren't happy about it. In terms of the Hajj, Francois Webb said, I did my Hajj and kissed the black stone. Yeah, I was an idiot. From Rex Forbes, good afternoon. I hope you're well. I hope you're well as well. If that is all the questions for today, thank you. You're very welcome for answering for me. You're very welcome. I'm happy to answer your questions anytime. If you have any more, feel free to leave me more on Twitter at my Twitter name. And I mean, it's been 37 minutes. I'm pretty hungry. I'm going to order some food, and I will see you next time. I don't know what I'm going to do on Wednesday. I would like to keep these on Sunday. I feel like people are more free on Sunday. But we'll see. We'll see what happens, because these are really easy for me to do. And honestly, they're not that demanding. Whereas some of the other videos, I'm like crying, dying. I can't do anything. I'm choking on everything. It's the worst. But thank you for being here with me, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.